We talked about the affordable housing definition, and we learn now that there are many definitions of the affordable housing. The mostly or the widely used, and at least in the States and part of Canada, is the 30% of your income be spent on your accommodation, either for the mortgage or for the rental. Without a doubt, after 2 days of presentations, we know the significant or the volume of the affordable housing issues around the world. So it's a major, and with the urbanization now happening around the world, it's becoming crisis with the 2/3 of the population will be moving to cities. 1/3 of the overall population on the world will be facing the affordable housing issue. So what are the main 4 pillars we'll be addressing today quickly, and we talked about some of them last time. I will jump directly to the first one, which is the land. The land is a big issue, and within my work with a few governments, the first urban development solution for the land availability is to go outside the cities and start looking for greenfield lands in order to start constructing affordable housing. This proven to be very challenging because of the lack of the infrastructure, specifically the social infrastructure. Second thing, the cost inherited in commuting and transportation and the time. So the main 6 solutions presented through our case studies around the world, the first one is unlocking the idle land. When we did scanning for specific cities, either in Africa or in the Middle East, we realized that the idle land within a city or within urban developed areas are far more than what's required for the affordability. Which means if we find the framework and the policies to unlock these lands, we'll address big part of the affordability. How we do that? First one is either the incentives, by incentivizing these landowners to unlock these lands and put it back to the pool of development. Second thing, by producing some of the measures, either with taxation on land value, taxation also on infrastructure and services, specifically for the lands that benefited from the urban development framework and escalation of the land value. The second thing is the ensuring of the titling. Again, most of the cities, they have some issues with the title deed or the ownership, and we structured with some of the government a mission. Independent office tried to dig deep on the titling or the ownership in order for us to clear up some of the ownership issues for these owners to unlock this land. The third one is the smart transit-oriented development, where instead of going outside the city, we choose to build TODs or transit-oriented development on the transit systems that connect the cities with the transit orientation. So people, they can go to work, they can commute without really spending time and money. Other one is the improving of the owner land, or putting the, what we call it, the land pooling, in a sense that owners of few plots of land, they put back their lands to the pool system, where the government now take these lands, develop it, provide the infrastructure and the social infrastructure that will double or triple the cost of this land. After doing this improvement, the government will give back the owners equivalent to their land value at the time of the acquisition. In a sense, if I take a piece of land, 500 acres, let's assume, and I do the infrastructure, the social, the services, and it double in value, I'll give you back 250 hectares, the half of it, which is equivalent to the land. Of course, we need to be careful because this policy will suggest a lot of land evaluation across the way. You need to evaluate in the beginning, throughout the way, at the end, in order to do the swap, under the promise that the landowners will unlock this land and develop it. And that's very important because you don't want to do all of this enhancement, increase the value of land and give it back to owners where they will sleep on it and then wait until the values trouble. After that, they sell it or they give it back to their kids. So the policies also will determine a time frame and the framework of these landowners to develop the land. Of course, other than that, you have the releasing public land. That's very common in China and part of Asia, where the government every year, they decide on big portions of land released at a discounted rate to a set of developers in order for them to develop it, and at the promise again to have an affordable discounted rate housing. Also, there's a scheme in China where they can lease it, the ownership of the land, for 70 to 90 years. So again, making it sustainable for the developer, sustainable for the end user, and at the same time workable for the government in order to recover the infrastructure cost. The most important thing after you do all of these techniques is one higher goal, is to educate the landowner and to create a responsible land ownership. In a sense, all of these landowners, they get to learn after they go through this system about the importance of unlocking the land and about also the social impact of these lands being given to affordable housing. The second one is the development, and it's two main streams. The first one is how to create a viable development and to cut the construction cost by moving from housing construction to housing production. In a sense, you are moving the housing into an industrial approach, not industrial feeling. And these modular systems are connected with the production line, where the cement factory or the production line is also on the site in order to save on the logistic and the supply chain time and cost. So the design being moved to standardization, the production line being moved to the site, and also at the same site, we created offices for institutions and banks, where the developer concluded a mortgage system with these banks and moved the offices of these banks to the site. After that, we talked with the regulatory framework or the city planning department, and we created an office on site also for the processing of the agreements, approving the drawings, processing of the ownership. And that model now, today, is working magic, because you go to one site at one area, you select your type of housing, let's say type A. The minute you select this house, that will trigger the production line in a fully automated system. The production line is on site, will start really breaking this type A into a set of walls. Within these walls, all the conduiting and all the connections being built in, and will produce a models or a ready-made prefab construction or walls and start the assembly on site. So in a simple word, you go and within 1 hour or 2 hours, on-site office, you leave with your title deed and ownership of a house, with a time frame, with the agreed mortgage, as per the institution or the bank institution who are already on site, and you know your house, and you know the time frame, and you live with that. That was done only by bringing all the stakeholders together. So it's not a city or a government policies, it's not a private sector, it's not a public, it's not a community and non-profit. It's all of these under one commitment in one site. And if we can't really do that, we will always fail short of finding a comprehensive solution. We'll talk about that ecosystem going forward. I'll move quickly. In terms of operation and maintenance, most of the people, they mentioned it's not, affordable housing is not about finding a cheap or affordable place to live in. Sometimes the operation, the utilities consumptions goes far beyond the affordability, and finding the affordable systems for improving efficiency, the wording are not clear. So for example, in the US, specifically in Boston and then the UK, they structure subsidies where these subsidies, they go and they retrofit housing to make it more affordable in terms of energy consumption, in terms of solar system. Some of the retrofitted communities in UK and in the States start even generating power by having a solar system on it. But then again, the minute you go from prevention of loss when it comes to power and energy to production of power, then you can sell back even to the grid of the city. And we connected some of the solar system producers to go and to retrofit some of the buildings, agreeing that 20% of the saving or what they create in the solar system will go for the residents because they are giving that manufacturing the surface or the roof, but then 40% goes to the city, and the rest, which is 40%, is the profit for the solar system production company. And it works well. Again, it's only about finding an ecosystem where everybody is a winner and not trying to split responsibilities or try to do your part only in isolation. And that's very important. I'll move it quickly. Financing, we talked about it, but again, the main or the core thing of it, as I mentioned in my ecosystem, the sector ecosystem I mentioned, is allowing the low-income individual having access to mortgage with a structured financial systems that is commercially viable and sustainable. So you allow these people to pay back their mortgages. And you allow also for the financial institution to create really viable financial system. We'll skip on that because there are 4 ways, but I think yesterday we discussed most of the financial cities. As my colleague mentioned earlier, with the United Nations, the housing start becoming part of a mission that everybody has the right of a decent housing. And the social impact of that, we still, in most of our work, approaching the housing and the affordability as a product. We should look at the social impact and the other dimensions of a community for that product. We'll skip this. We talked about the Kenya. I'll talk quickly about the affordable housing principle, starting with the leadership. Again, leadership is very important. Try to find a leadership of affordable housing, that they study all the aspects of the affordable housing. Financial institutions, they study affordable housing from a mortgage perspective. Community, they study the social impact of affordable housing. Developers, they do the same based on a land value. Governments, they look at the policies, and most of the time, again, they don't really enforce all of these policies, not when it comes to involving a third party, which is the developer. So having a leadership who understand all the aspects of affordable housing, bring all the parties together, and take control of the affordable housing leadership. We talked about the case study of Singapore, so I won't repeat it. I'll move to the second one, is the financing. Again, we talked about most of the financing either going to the end user, which is the mortgage, or financing some of the development with the low return in order to enable these developers to move with the development. Microfinancing is very important, and we talked about the slums. One of the case studies in India, in Pune, where some of the financial institutions, instead of focusing on the bigger development financing and mixed use, they wanted to create a product cater for the slums upgrade or the enhancement of the housing. That is not really big product, is the profit per ticket price is not very high, but has a huge volume. So they work on a mass production. And these banks or the financial institution, they created a viable, as we said, product, sustainable, so even the lower income families, they can pay for it, and at the same time can work on a bigger scale because they were not really targeting 1 or 2. With this going to the bottom of the market, they have a huge access to larger number of clients. Partnership, at any affordable housing, you are talking about 6 to 10 partners, they need to work together. So it's not only the city, it's not only the developer, it's not only the non-profit organization, it's also the community, it's the end user, it's the financial institution, and we need to find a way where we bring all the partners together, creating, as I said, sustainable product that all of us can participate and also can win. Morocco, that's very important project where the government released around 3,800, I think, hectare. They give it in a discounted price to a developer, with three conditions. The first condition, 2/3 of the site will be developed towards affordable housing. And the third will be for higher income or mixed income people. Second thing, that the private developer will take control of this project. It means they will do the design, they will do the development, they will do the maintenance after the construction. And the third thing, they will keep it within a bracket of affordability, at least for the 2/3. What does it really mean? Mean the private developer utilizing all their savvy knowledge about construction and development and getting the leverage of the discounted prices. The third, which is for the higher income, will make sure you are not really creating isolated, affordable housing community, so it has a good social association with the higher income and the utilities that it provides. And the third point, that also will ensure that the private developer has a stake in the game. So you are not really coming to do it and then you exit the market. You will have a stake and a longer term engagement, so you will ensure to do a good job from day one, because you will be responsible on managing that and developing that and operating that. And that's the secret. Again, if you give it to one small developer with the exit strategy of 1 year or 2 years, they will give you the cheapest product and good luck with the operation. When you create a stake for every party for a longer term and a shorter term gain, then everybody in the same page. And also you guarantee that you are not really isolating a certain area for affordable housing, which you're creating social impact of isolation. The community is very important, as we talked about it. It's not only about creating a product and residential, it's also about creating a community and creating a social impact. How you really guarantee access of these people not to be isolated. In Boston, for example, in the last 3-4 years, the Boston Authority, they have clear instruction that any affordable housing goes within a mixed-use development as a percentage or ratio of your building. So if you are building a building, regardless what the luxury level or the mid-income level, 2 or 3 floors of that tower goes to affordable housing. So you can't really isolate people by creating community for affordability. You are mixing everybody together. California, also in the USA, this by Irvin, where they created a very nice, affluent, good, sophisticated community of villas in California. And then the city came and they said, next to that area, having access to the same utilities, you are building a residential building, which is more on the affordable side, which again, people, they can have access to these facilities. They can be associated with a better way of living. They can mix all the mixed income people without, again, going through isolation. And that's how they lifted people from being isolated in slums or in affordable areas that 20 or 100 kilometers away from the center or from where they work. We talked about the Boston case study. I'll move quickly because I've been warned with the time. I will move to the learning of these case studies, because we have New York City approach in terms of, again, the 4 pillars, Pune and Singapore. The reason I choose these 3, you'll see different in their approach, but you'll see always applicable is the land, development, maintenance, financing, and the delivery platform this city they created. So from New York, where you don't really have huge empty plots or green fields, they go and they start working on either changing the permitting or the zoning in some of the areas. So New York City Development Department, they choose some of the areas where was supposed to be office or was supposed to be residential, but with the lower GFA area and the built-up area, because they don't really have any other empty areas, and they changed it. In a sense, they gave the developer higher built-up area, but from the 20% higher built-up area, they requested the developer to give back 10% as affordable housing. that's a way when you don't really have access to idle land. In Pune, India is different because you have access to this land, so you can do more by creating a different framework. In Singapore, you go more aggressively on cities or government-led policies, as we heard in my colleague presentation. I've been asked to talk about the real estate statutory framework, and this is one of the slides I presented 2 months ago. I will not really go through it, but the main learning that we need also to keep focusing on the real estate cycle, where we are at this real estate cycle, and we need to keep also measuring and creating impact. Because whatever laws and regulation we put today, it might be applicable. There might be some exceptions as we move ahead. There might be some needs to refine these. The most important thing, if you see in the time frame of Dubai, starting from 1998, when the formation of some of the real estate development started, and then moving to 2001, where we allowed foreign expats to own some of the developer, and then we released the lands and we created the IFC, which is the financial institution, to encourage the FDIs, the foreign direct investment. So it's a chain of command tailored to enhance the real estate development in Dubai. But the most important thing in 2007 is the creation of RERA, which is the Real Estate Regulatory Authority, trying to create one authority looking at all real estate related issues, controlling all the private, semi-private, public development and real estate associated services in a cohesive approach to a city and city dynamics when it comes to real estate. The reason I think we want to talk about RERA, because it's very important at every city to create one entity looking at all the picture. And then with the time frame or the framework, I know that I don't have more time, so I'll jump quickly. I think I'll move quickly to this slide, and that will be my closure. We know that the policies and procedure at any city can enhance really the real estate development, either by increasing the built-up area permitted, changing of the zoning, having access to idle land, forcing some taxation and service charges for this idle land to encourage landowners to release or unlock these lands. But the most important thing, as I mentioned with the ideal solution for the affordable housing, is to create or to develop a comprehensive approach where all the parties involved in the affordable housing come together against one ecosystem that connect them with the end user, with the city economies, with the supply and demand, and to create what we call the closed loop. What I mean by the closed loop, when you start doing the development, you see the impact of it, you measure it, either with, now we have lots of measurement tools by data analytics, taking all the data, moving from measuring the results into prediction, into projection, and into prevention. Prevention in a sense that you try all of these tricks and you see what works, what's not, and the area which you need to refine. In my opinion, unless we have one system bringing all the stakeholders together, we won't be able to address the affordable housing completely. And what I want to suggest to you today, that if any of these stakeholders fail, we all fail. Unless we come up with that ecosystem driven by policies of a city and regulatory framework bringing everybody and also maintaining a sustainable, successful way of creating affordable housing at a scale with the social inclusion at its core, then we won't be able to succeed. Thank you very much.